Here's a sample of what you'll hear on this episode of Natural Health Matters.
Yeah, and I feel like people just want the easy route of take the supplement, take the medication, and then they don't even realize, well, I've been on this supplement for how long or this medication for how long? Is it actually working for me, or should I try something different?
Welcome to the Natural Health Matters podcast, where it's all about maximizing your health potential so that you can pursue the abundant life more effectively. I'm your host, David Sandstrom, naturopathic doctor and biblical health coach, and this is episode number 44. This episode is brought to you by my book, The Christian's Guide to Holistic Health. Getting educated on natural and holistic health is time-consuming and can be expensive, not to mention overwhelming. I want to help you with that. My book will put you on the fast track to the vibrant health and vitality you've been looking for. If you'd like to avoid overwhelm and get some biblically based holistic health information that you can implement right away, go to my website, davidsandstrom.com/book. You can learn more and pick up a copy today. If that doesn't work, you can go directly to Amazon. It's available there in paperback, Kindle, and Audible. Now let's get started with today's show. My guest today is Amanda Elise Love. Amanda is a registered holistic nutritionist. She believes the holistic approach to health means the integration of the mind, body, and spirit. She has a long history of illness, which culminated with the diagnosis of fibromyalgia at the age of 20. She no longer suffers from the pain, fatigue, and headaches associated with that syndrome. Today, she works with people who have similar stories. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you taking the time. So, for starters, why don't you define for the audience what exactly is fibromyalgia?
So recently I listened to a fibro doctor, and he actually said fibromyalgia is like an umbrella. It doesn't cause any of these symptoms, but usually with fibromyalgia, you have the fatigue, the brain fog, the sleep issues, and then you have multiple issues on top of that. But the fibromyalgia doesn't cause it.
Okay, so it's basically a collection of symptoms, right?
Yeah, it's a collection of symptoms.
Mm-hmm. So how did you first get diagnosed with that?
I was first diagnosed with it back in 2010. We didn't know what was going on with me. I was extremely sick. I was born 6 weeks early. I had a lot of immune issues. I was sick every 4 to 6 weeks. And I turned 20 years old. All of a sudden, I couldn't get off the couch. I couldn't move. I couldn't work out. And I had just finished a 500-hour personal training program like 2 weeks beforehand, before I turned 20. And so we didn't know what was going on. And it took like 10 months for us to go to one of the top rheumatology places in Mesa, Arizona.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, she has fibromyalgia.
Okay. And what was your reaction when you heard that?
I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
I didn't know what that meant. I mean, nowadays we see the commercial for fibromyalgia in the U.S. and stuff.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I still don't know what it means.
I mean, I feel like we still sort of don't know what it means because they haven't decided what it is really.
Yeah.
It's crazy. They can't figure that out. And then they're also cutting research for it in the U.S.
Right. So basically, my understanding of fibromyalgia is it's basically that the term fibromyalgia is a Latin name for what's describing your symptoms.
Yeah.
I mean, it's my understanding is fibromyalgia is a name for your symptoms. And what doctors like to do is they name it, claim it, and tame it. They give your symptoms a name, and they usually use a Latin term to do that, call it a disease, and then they blame your symptoms on that disease, and then they tame it with pharmaceuticals. So that's why they need the label, is because they have drugs that are approved to treat XYZ. So they need a name. Actually, I got that. I want to give credit where credit is due. From my last guest is Lindsay Elmore. She's a licensed pharmacist, and she's the one that came up with that term, and I liked it, so I figured I'd share it. But anyway, so that's what's going on with you. But I'm thinking your understanding is the underlying cause of all those symptoms is something altogether different than just I caught this disease. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So I honestly think trauma plays a big part. Maybe you had some trauma in your life that you haven't dealt with. I think food sensitivities could play a part. It's environmental, just a lot of different things could play a part. It's just like any other health condition that people have. There's a lot of things that could play a part. I always tell people, I don't think one thing is why you have that illness. It's a multiple of things.
Yeah. I'm an airline captain. Been a captain for many years with a major airline based out of Atlanta. And a lot of people say, well, there's so much pressure when you fly the airplane. Well, we don't really think about that, but we understand how accidents happen. And there's never a single thing that'll take down an airliner. It's always a collection of things. There's a chain of events that leads to an accident. So what we get paid to do is to recognize when that chain is starting to accelerate and then stop that. We got to stop that process. That's how we maintain our safety margin. And I think the same could be said for fibromyalgia or any health challenge, really, is that if we start addressing the chain of events that led to these symptoms, then the symptoms will go away on their own.
Right. And people don't want to take the time to do that, which is bad. Right. They just go straight to the pharmaceuticals.
Exactly. We want the drive-through help. We want to just pull in, 5-minute visit, walk out with a prescription, and that's going to tame our problem.
I mean, right now we're dealing with the coronavirus across the world, and they just want to do the vaccination instead of doing the hard stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the reason why I started the podcast back in the spring is when what I was hearing from the government experts was really nothing but avoidance. Stay home, stay safe, wear a mask, use hand sanitizer, just stay away from the germs. There's nothing else you can do. And I said to myself, that's madness. There's plenty we can do to strengthen our systems. We can strengthen our immune with diet, by cutting out sugar. We can address our microbiome. We can work on our vitamin D levels. We can get exercise, outdoor air. I mean, there are so many things we can do to strengthen our systems such that they're hostile environments for any microbe, including COVID. Yeah. So, just a real quick story. When I was a practitioner, people would come to me and they'd usually seen several doctors first, and then they come to a holistic practitioner. And the first thing they say to me is, can you give me a supplement that will relieve my symptoms the way the drugs do without the side effects? And I have to explain to them, no, you've got it all wrong. That's not what holistic health is all about. A pill for every ill, so to speak. We're not going to embrace that. What we're going to embrace is holistic health. We're going to talk about your relationships. We're going to talk about the physical, of course, your sleep, your diet and exercise routine and those kinds of things, removing toxins from the home. We're going to talk about mental emotional issues. Do you have any resentment or anger or bitterness that's eating at you? Those are the things. Once you start chopping down those trees, eventually you'll make it to the clearing. And it really doesn't matter a whole lot what the diagnosis is or what the symptoms are that are presenting. When you start building health at the functional level, then the symptoms just disappear on their own. We don't have to address the symptoms.
Yeah, and I feel like people just want the easy route of take the supplement, take the medication, and then they don't even realize, well, I've been on this supplement for how long or this medication for how long? Is it actually working for me, or should I try something different?
What's been your experience with that, with people that come to you with a fibromyalgia diagnosis and they're on meds? What's been your experience? Do people say, hey, this stuff's not working. I'm looking for another, a better way?
Yeah, I find I think a lot of times with people with fibromyalgia, they're on the medications, but they don't know what else they can do.
Yeah.
And I say there is ways to get better. It just takes, it's not an easy, quick fix. I always tell people. I mean,
Sure.
I personally, my story is I actually had to get off the gluten. I had to get off the soy. I had to get off the dairy and then the eggs. And I actually had to do an elimination diet because I actually was tested by a wellness chiropractor, and I found out I had 2 genes that predisposed me to that gluten sensitivity. It was the highest in his practice at the time, and I was 21 years old. And then all my other sensitivities were extremely high.
Yeah.
It really comes down to how motivated are you to change?
Yeah. Well, I want to explain for those that might not be familiar. What Amanda's talking about is if we have a food sensitivity, we may not have a full-blown allergy to that food,
No.
but our bodies struggle with it nonetheless. And when they do, they have trouble digesting it. It produces an inflammatory state in the body. And this inflammation is systemic. It's through all of our systems. And that can cause a lot of pain, such as the pain associated with fibromyalgia.
Yeah, and it also causes I got headaches constantly, like every single day. I was so fatigued, and I was getting it probably was affecting my immune system too, because I was constantly dealing with like sinus infections and congestion and all of that type of stuff. So really, food plays a huge part. And I think a lot of times we say, oh, we're going to cut out the gluten. But then I always tell people gluten stays in your body. One little molecule can stay up in your body for up to weeks, up to months. So if you're going to cut out the gluten, you have to really, really cut out the gluten. And you can't cheat. And people aren't as strict about their diet as they should be.
Yeah. Yeah. What I tell people, especially when it comes to gluten, that is troublesome for a lot of people, is it's kind of, you've got to eliminate it entirely for at least 3 months.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like you've got a big lake and there's a strong wind going and there's a lot of ripples on the lake and even waves and whitecaps maybe. Well, you've got to let that windstorm calm down and you've got to let that lake settle down till that water is glass smooth. And when that happens in your system, then you try to introduce it in a very small portion. And when the water is still and calm in your body and your body's at peace, your body's at rest, when you introduce this offensive food, if you really truly do have a sensitivity to it, you're going to notice it right away. Unless you are disciplined and you really truly do eliminate it and you know where to look for the sources, the hidden sources of that food, because it shows up in all kinds of processed foods, you're not going to be able to experience that stillness, that calmness, and you won't be able to tell the difference when you reintroduce that food.
Yeah, it's totally true. And I always tell people gluten might be an issue, but you might also have other sensitivities that you need to get rid of too. I think right now, I think it's such a big thing about go gluten free. And we see it everywhere, but nobody's saying anything about, oh, you might have to eliminate the dairy, the soy, the eggs, the other not 8 allergens that people could be allergic to.
Right. So in your practice, how is it that you determine food sensitivities for somebody? Do you simply use the elimination diet or do you have any tests that you use?
I do a health history that tells me will give me an idea, maybe if they're sensitive to the food. And then I would do an elimination diet with them. But I always tell people I would never start with elimination diet because it's very, very strict. And people with fibromyalgia can't even get off the couch and they're not getting that deep restorative sleep. So that's more like down the road, like 3 months with working with me, then we might do the elimination diet.
So where do you start with somebody? What's step one?
So step one is if they actually sign up to be if they want to work with me one-on-one, it's a 90-minute health history. Because I am the type of person, if I want to know everything about you, and it's a very detailed health history. It's not your normal. Some of it's like a doctor's health history, and then some of it's not. But I learn about your health top health concerns, I see, oh, maybe your immune system is sort of weak. Maybe we need to work on your immune system, your digestive system, depending. And a lot of times I find people, they leave things out. Like they might say, well, I don't eat any sugar. And then I find out, okay, well, do you have cookies? Do you have cake? I think we don't realize what we do with our health when we're writing something down, when we're filling out a form, until somebody actually asks us these like specific questions.
I totally agree. I experienced the same thing as a practitioner. Almost everyone, this is almost universal.
Yeah.
When you ask them, if you can't ask them a general question like, how's your diet? Because everyone's going to say, I eat pretty good. I don't eat any sugar. And then you find out they're drinking 4 Cokes every day. It's like, well, no, that's not no sugar.
Well, I always get the answer of, well, I eat pretty healthy. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What does that even mean? There's so many things that you could be doing. And I thought I was eating perfectly healthy before I had to get rid of all those different food allergies. I didn't know that that was contributing to me being sick.
So you start out with somebody with a lengthy health assessment. And then what specific instructions do you give that person? In other words, what action steps can they take to start out with?
So I usually I create a plan and I'll send them off like a PDF of different recommendations that they should do. It all depends on where they want to start. If they want to start with their sleep, then we start with the sleep. But I only do like 2 or 3 recommendations. I find people can't do too much at one time. We're very busy people. And
right. That's human nature.
It's human nature. And a lot of times people, they don't want to make huge changes. So I always say, well, let's start small. I mean, I'm the type of person who likes to, if I'm going to make a change, I'd probably make a change, like a big change. It all really comes down to their mindset of where they are and where they want to focus. If they want to focus on the lifestyle first, or if they want to start with supplements or food. If it's like, say, breakfast, then we would just start with breakfast. We wouldn't change the other meals until a few weeks later. Then if they're following the recommendations, then we would do lunch and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think the idea of starting off with baby steps is a great idea. I said a little bit ago that I'm an airline captain, and sometimes people will ask me, well, how do you deal with all that responsibility if, 200 people's lives in your hands every time you go to work? Well, that's true. Yeah. But we don't take 3 or 4 flight lessons and then jump in the captain's seat of a jet airliner. We take it a step at a time. We learn that process one step at a time, and the steps are such that failure is not going to happen. You can't have a student go up and solo until they're ready. Right. So we take it a step at a time and we grow into that responsibility. Therefore, you're not overwhelmed by it. And the same is true when making healthy lifestyle changes. We've got to start off with steps that are easily manageable and take them one at a time, literally one at a time, and build upon that. And, one step here, one step there, 4, 5, 6 months, 12 months down the road, we've made some major progress, but we can't do that overnight. That's unrealistic.
Yeah, and I always tell people it's baby steps. Some of these recommendations, it might only take a few minutes out of your day to do. We're not going to jump in and say, oh, you have to be making all these healthy meals and stuff if you can't even get off the couch.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, you didn't wake up with this health condition, so you have to realize it might take a week to start to slowly feel better, weeks, months. It all depends on where you are in your health journey.
Right.
Because a lot of times people have so many health conditions, you can't expect it to go away within a week, 2 weeks, a couple months.
Right. It's a long haul. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yeah, it's a marathon.
Yeah. So I know when I'm listening to shows like this, I'm looking for low-hanging fruit that I can take with me.
Okay.
So let's say somebody came to you and they said, Amanda, I'm really down on energy. I drink a coffee in the afternoon, but that's just not doing it anymore. Used to do it, but now my energy is really lagging. I have this joint pain. I have headaches that are unexplained. You take the health assessment. This person's not on the couch. They're actually, maintaining, holding down a job. Right. And, what would you say to that person? Give us 3 or 4 steps that you could, or pointers that you could offer that person.
So I would say get off the gluten if you're not off the gluten. I would also say, what is your stress level? I think a lot of times if we're depleted with our energy, we probably are dealing with a lot of stress. What can you take off your plate that you could actually have someone else do? Maybe it's the cooking, maybe it's the cleaning, right? I think a lot of times we put so much pressure to do everything when we can't.
Yeah.
I know this is crazy, but I think a lot of times people just need a day off a week where they just re-energize themselves and do things. Get out of nature, do something that's fun. Because I think a lot of times when we're dealing with so much pressure in our lives, that depletes our energy. So do something fun. And then I think the last thing would be to look into supplements that help with energy, because supplements can really help get that energy back up. And one of my favorite supplements that I've been taking, and I found out through a book, is Doctor's Best D-Ribose. And that really is amazing for energy. And especially if you're in like pain and fatigue.
So what Amanda is speaking about is addressing the whole person, not just the physical, but the mental, emotional aspects as well, because we are a spirit, we have a mind, and we live in a body. If we don't address all 3 parts of a human being, spirit, mind, and body, we're not going to build a championship vitality. So if we want to maximize our health potential, we've got to consider all 3 aspects of the human condition together in unison. And I believe we maximize our health potential by aligning our lives more fully with God's design for spirit, mind, and body. That's kind of holism in a nutshell.
Right.
Another quick story. When people find out I'm an airline pilot, a lot of times they'll say, I got a question for you. I've never met a pilot before. Have you ever been scared in an airplane? And the truth is, I have. And one of the times was we were coming out of New York's JFK Airport, John F. Kennedy Airport, and there was a really bad ice storm. It was like January, February, middle of the winter, and it was really windy. And we were taxiing out. We got de-iced, but the taxiways were covered with ice. And we came up to this taxiway as approaching the runway that we needed to use for takeoff, and it totally looked like a skating rink. And ground control says, hey, Delta, what does that taxiway off your right look like? I said, it looks like a skating rink. And he pauses for a second. He says, okay, clear to taxi over that taxiway, taxi up to the runway, and hold short. So the captain turns the airplane. I was the flight engineer at this time. So I was just in the back kind of, offering my advice, operating the systems. Right. I wasn't flying the airplane. So the captain turns the airplane, and we got sideways to the wind. And airplanes have big tails that are designed to stabilize the aircraft. So when we got sideways with no traction on the wheels, that wind weather vaned the airplane. We just started spinning and sliding, and the nose pointed into the wind. So we tried to turn the other direction. Same exact thing happened. Just then the flight attendant calls up and says, hey, there's a passenger back here that wants to know why we're going around in circles. So we were sliding all over the place. And it was just by the grace of God that we didn't hit another airplane or, end up in the grass. Because once that airplane starts to slide with all that inertia, you're just along for the ride. There's nothing you can do. So finally, the captain sets the parking brake, says, tell him to get a sand truck out here. So we waited, 30-minute delay, and we got the sand on the ice, and we were able to taxi out to the runway, and we took off uneventfully. Yeah. So here's the point. The captain was trying to operate that airplane contrary to its design, but because airplanes are designed to point into the wind, and we have to address our health in a fashion that's consistent with our built-in design. Yeah. See, God has a preference for the way we treat our spirit and the way we treat our minds and the way we treat our bodies. And when we come into alignment with that, things just start to work out. Things work out better.
Yeah.
So that's my holistic health story.
I honestly think, a lot of times we're so focused on one aspect and we don't focus on our spirituality and stuff. We just focus on, okay, well, my health is bad. I'm just going to focus on the health part of it. Or I'm just going to focus on the supplement part, or we're going to focus, I'm just going to focus on my diet. And it's really honestly, it's a combination of all of it.
Absolutely. What I tell people a lot is if you get a problem with anger and bitterness and rage, you can switch to 100% organic tomorrow. That's not going to fix your issues.
No, you really have to go back and see what issues you had. A lot of times it's issues that maybe you grew up in not a family that was the greatest. And so you need to work on that before you focus on the food stuff.
Yes, absolutely. So you do some of that work with your clients?
Yeah,
that's great.
It's big. I think it's big to focus on where you were before you got the illness too. You didn't wake up with the illness. It's a lot of mindset stuff.
Yep, no doubt about it. We've been talking with Amanda Elise Love. She has a podcast. It's called Fibromyalgia Real Solutions with Amanda Love. And her website is AmandaEliseLove.com. Is there another way to get a hold of you, Amanda, or is that the best way to get a hold of you, through the website?
Yeah, that's a way that they could sign up for a free 30-minute call so they could see if they want to work with me, and I could learn more about them. I also have a free sleep guide on there that they just might want to start with first. And that's a great way just to start becoming a part of my community.
Okay, so they can join your email list and get that as a download?
Yeah, it's a download.
Great.
And
Excellent.
then, of course, social media, Facebook and Instagram. And that's also Amanda Elise Love. So those are several ways that you could get started and see what I'm about.
AmandaEliselove.com.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's that for everything.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed the conversation.
I did too. Thank you so much, David.
Don't forget, this episode is brought to you by my book, The Christian's Guide to Holistic Health. In those pages, I give you detailed instructions on how to maximize your health potential by aligning your life more fully with God's design for spirit, mind, and body. If this biblically based message is resonating with you, what are you waiting for? Go to my website, davidsandstrom.com/book, and order your copy today. For more, go to davidsandstrom.com. In the show notes for each episode, you'll find links to all the resources that were mentioned, as well as a full transcript with timestamps that you can download for free. In addition, I always include a content upgrade with each show, which is a free download that is designed to help you go deeper with that subject. Once again, thank you for listening, and I'll talk with you next week. Be blessed.